Hey everyone, welcome to the Sustain the Range podcast. I'm Lauren, your host, and this podcast is a personal exploration of my experiences in everything ranching. From beef operations to training horses to sustainable farming and regenerative practices, we'll cover it all. Each episode features enlightening conversations with guests who bring their unique perspectives and expertise. Whether they're seasoned ranchers or first-generation farmers, we all share a common bond and deep appreciation for the land and the livestock we raise. Tune in each week for engaging discussions, inspiring stories, and practical insights from the ranching community, and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sustain the Range podcast. I hope that you all are having a great day or evening wherever you are. Today I thought that I would talk about calving season. So it was my first calving season here in Montana, and it was amazing. I learned so much from, ear tagging to vaccinating to seeing orphan calves, twins, to seeing some calves unfortunately pass away, seeing the circle of life, seeing calves being born. So there was a lot that happened, and I just thought that I would talk a little bit about it. So let's just get right into it. So what was calving season like? So overall, we had about 60 calves this year at the ranch. And it was a lot of days of no sleep. They started calving mid-March, towards the end of March, and throughout April. So it was a lot of nights of no sleep. There were early mornings, really, really late nights, 1 a.m. in the morning to super early, 4 o'clock in the morning, going to check on calves, going to check on moms that were giving birth or about to give birth. There was a lot that went on. So as anybody in a calving season, we know that kind of sleep deprivation is one of them, and it's just super busy because you have to be on the clock all the time. And especially when you have a cow or a heifer who is giving birth for the first time, you really want to make sure that you watch them and, hopefully that they don't have any difficulties calving. But so it's just an on the clock, all day, all night, on call kind of situation. And with the winter weather here in Montana, it can be really difficult. So when you get these really, really cold temperatures, the calves, you just really have to watch over them. So a lot of no sleep. And the third day that I was there on the ranch kind of helping check on calves, there was a mom who had twins, and we got there, we checked on her probably 7-8 o'clock at night, went back about an hour and a half later, and we knew that she was probably going to calve within the next couple of hours. So we went back around, 9 o'clock or so. And unfortunately, we found 2 twins, and they had passed away. So it's pretty common that all of the calves in your herd will not survive. I think the number kind of is thrown around about 10% or so probably won't make it. And that's just due to a whole number of issues. If they're heifers and they have trouble giving birth for the first time, if you have some really bad weather, if something happens during pregnancy. And with these 2 twins, we think that there was something wrong in pregnancy, that maybe they had previously passed away, not too long before that, but didn't pass away, right at birth. So yeah, it was a really, it was kind of just really thrown into the mix of all of it. And you kind of just go there and you see these two calves laying down, and they weren't our calves. So when you know that you are helping somebody else with their herd and you have two calves pass away on you, it's pretty difficult, and you never want to see that, and you never want that to happen. But you just have to kind of, go through the motions with it and muster up and just move on. You got to maybe try to figure out, what happened, and if you can, if you can't. Having twins for a cow, some people like to have twins because then you get two calves, obviously, through the season, but it can be pretty difficult on a cow to have twins. And I won't go too much into the science of it, but it can be a pretty difficult thing for the mom, especially if it is their first time, or if they are, an older cow that might just not have the stability or stamina anymore to be able to kind of handle that birthing process. So yeah, so it was pretty difficult to see, and it was kind of like, wow, kind of right in your face, and seeing those two twins on the ground. It was pretty eye-opening experience. Another thing that I do want to mention, and just as I'm talking about all of this and sharing, this is an episode in a podcast just to share everything I've learned. So anything that I'm talking about, what I've noticed in the cattle world, much like the horse world, that every ranch, every trainer, they kind of have their own way of doing things. And it's not to say that one is right or wrong, but I'm just kind of sharing how my experiences and how I've learned it and how we've been doing it. And, so back to the twins. So one of the reasons why we are not a super huge fan of, mom cow having twins is just because, again, the calving difficulties that can happen in birth. It's common that one calf out of the twin is weaker than the other. And a lot of the times, or sometimes, the mom will decide that she can only either care for one calf or only has enough milk to care for one calf, and will abandon kind of the weaker twin. And that's just the process of natural selection. That's their natural instinct. What I've really seen and what's been really cool is the natural world, really how alive and present it is. And the survival of the fittest is still really prevalent in cattle, and especially, even though they've been quote unquote domesticated for a long time, the process of natural selection and survival of the fittest is really still there. And you really do see it when these moms, kind of sense that something's wrong with one calf, or, and I noticed that I had a calf who passed away, and we tried to replace her. So, what we try to do is, if she was a twin, and I'm actually going to do a whole other episode on this one calf because of what I learned, but she was technically what's called a free martin. And what that is when a mom has twins and one is a boy and one is a girl. And the female is known as a free martin because she is more than likely 90% infertile, because in the womb, her ovaries don't develop and there's a lot of hormone exchange going on. And the male actually kind of overtakes the female. So the female hormones and, genetics and things like that can not fully develop. And the heifer, the girl, the female, can take on a lot of masculine traits. So their ovaries don't really develop very well. Their reproductive system just isn't there because of that transfer of hormones. and it's severely underdeveloped. So when they are born, that heifer, the female, is called a free martin. And again, that is a whole other episode because there's just so much there. And I've spoken to a couple of different ranchers who have had free martins and their experiences with it and things like that. And it's some really interesting stuff. But typically it's not a very welcomed calf because you can't breed them back. So for a cow-calf operation, a free martin heifer isn't necessarily what you want. So I also saw, a couple other calves die. And again, it's just something that I had to wrap my head around, that this just happens in the circle of life is pretty prevalent, and you really see it during calving season. And just knowing that not every calf's going to live is part of it. So we did have another calf who was also a twin, and the mom had abandoned what we think was the weaker one. And one day we went out to go check cows, and we had checked on her, a couple days before that. And the mom was with and I think it was a bull calf, that she had decided she was going to take. And then the other bull calf just wasn't, or I'm sorry, I think there were two females. Yeah. 'Cause there were two heifers. So she just decided that, she picked the strongest one, or for whatever reason, she decided that this was going to be her calf and she could only take care of this one. And we would kind of see the mom and that baby far away from the other twin. And so we just kept checking on them both. And then one day we went out there, really didn't see the other calf around very much. So started driving around and found her. And it looked like coyotes had gotten to her earlier in the morning or later that night. And yeah, it wasn't a pretty sight. And I won't go into too much detail with it, but it was sad. I mean, it's always a sucky thing to see, one, just an animal die like that, and two, just knowing that that's a part of your herd, and it's a really important part of your ranching business, so it really sucks. Excuse me. It really sucks when you see that happen. But again, you just have to realize that it's a part of it. And I will kind of go a little bit more into that towards the end, just about kind of what I've learned and what I saw throughout this whole calving season. But I just want to talk about a couple of different things just for those of you who are still learning and like me, and why some ranchers can't calf in different seasons and why some ranchers do different things. But I want to talk about calving in different seasons because it can vary from ranch to ranch. It can vary from different parts of the country, depending on weather, things like that. So there's, late summer, fall calving, and some ranchers who I've researched a little bit, when they calve in the late summer and the fall, they prefer to do it that way. One, because maybe around their work schedule or around their ranching schedule, it works better. So maybe they are even busier, during those early or late winter, early spring months, and they prefer to have calves in the summer when the weather's nicer. They don't want to have calves in the really cold weather. And they deal with things like frozen ears and calves that are born in really cold temperatures, which the risk is higher for losing a calf in those cold temps, especially if they are out, obviously, on pasture. So one rancher who I kind of read about said that she used to calve in the winter, or, late winter, early spring, and she moved her calving season to the summer and fall. And she said that she had less issues with dystocia, which is a term for calving issues, or basically when the mom is having difficulty giving birth. She also said that calving ease on her farm has generally improved over time because over the years she has been retaining heifers from the cows that are calving easily out on the pasture during this time. So another rancher from North Dakota calves in May and June, and he feels that when they calve in the late summer, then the calves get to stay on their moms all throughout the winter, and they wean in about late March using fence line weaning. So they'll separate the mom and the calf through a fence so that they're still next to each other. The calf might be able to get a little milk here and there, but they use this weaning process. So they feel that having the calves on the moms throughout the winter helps the winter go a lot smoother. And they also like to keep the calves on the mom for as long as possible to develop their rumen. And their rumen is the largest part of their stomach, and you want that to be pretty well developed for them to be able to easily digest forage. So yeah, those were a couple things that I had looked up and just wanted to get some different opinions from ranchers on why they choose to calve in the seasons that they do. So late winter and early spring calving, which a lot of ranchers do, and especially around here, because it makes sense for their schedule and it could make sense for their operation. And again, all of this is kind of a personal preference between ranch to ranch. So people have a lot of different reasons on why they decide to calf when they do. They feel, one rancher said that he tends to have a heavier calf after 180 days. And then by calving in the late winter, early spring, they're able to better utilize the high quality forage that's available in the spring and the summer. Whereas if you're calving in late May, the calves reach 180 days in early November, and the forage has started to, typically decline over that fall and into the winter. So I also found something really cool that I didn't know before. Is there was an article on USDA.gov, and it said there was an 82-year study of data that allowed scientists to look at cold mortality rate of beef calves born during the late winter. To avoid this risk, some ranchers prefer waiting until spring to calve. However, even after considering the risk, the researchers found early calving increases overall beef production. So typically, ranchers like to sell off part of their herd in November. So they'll take the cold cows and they'll bring them to market in November. One, it's just a really popular time, and two, because you don't want to be carrying a lot of cows over the winter in terms of if you're thinking about feed costs and things like that. So when calves are born in the nicer weather, they hit the ground running and they really start growing. One other rancher said that adding that winter-born calves use a lot of energy just to keep warm. So those were a couple of different opinions there. For our preference, my partner has 4 heifers now, and we're planning on getting more in this summer, in the fall. And we are going to put 2 bulls in with our heifers probably in July sometime. And we just feel that springtime is the best time to calve for us. We really like to sync up with nature. Nature is pretty smart. Nature is smarter than us, I believe. And I think that anything that we can do to really mimic what nature does on its own and what these animals do on their own is what we should try to follow. So, here in Montana, we battle some really cold and bitter winters. And when these calves are born in the wintertime, the risk is a little bit higher. And not that there can't be things that go wrong in the springtime, but if you kind of look around in the wild and in wildlife, when do the elk have babies? When do the deer have babies? Mostly in the springtime. So nature is already telling us right there that that's the best time to have babies. So we really want to keep that in mind and really, really mimic that. So we'll plan to calve around the springtime. And cows have about a 9-month gestation period. So a 9-month pregnancy. And if we put the bull in with these heifers, late July, we'll hopefully get some calves starting late March, hopefully more towards April when that spring weather starts to happen. So another few things that I learned during calving season. So this is kind of more of the fun part. Castration, ear tagging, vaccinating, all the different kinds of things. And I had some trial and error with all of them. So first off, I'll talk about castration. So we on the ranch castrate within a day or two of birth. And again, this is a preference. There's a lot of ranchers out there who do it differently. There's different kinds of castration, but we prefer to use the banding method. And it's just kind of a little small, almost looks like an elastic band, and you use a tool to put it on to the testes and you kind of band them. We prefer to do it that way, within the first couple days of birth, because it tends to be a little less painful process for the calf, a little less trauma, less stress. And with the banding method, there's a little bit less risk of infections. And of course, infections can still happen, such as, tetanus or something that's called blackleg. But that can tend to be an even higher risk if you band a little bit later after birth. So we really try to get in there within the first day or two of the calf being born. One, because they're a lot easier to catch. And two, again, because we just feel like the process is a little less traumatic for the calf rather than waiting a while and then having to go back in there, catch the calf, tie him down, and put this band on. And I'll explain a little bit more how that process works. But one quick story is one day, kind of going back to why they're so hard to catch. The calves are, once they kind of drop to the ground, especially in the springtime, it's amazing to kind of see they are born, and then even a few hours later, and you want to see this, is the calves up and running around and lively. Once they start to get older, they're a lot more lively and they grow and they get stronger and a lot faster. So there was a day when we had to move all of the cows in to be able to put them through the head gate. And we moved, I think, about 120 or so that day of cows. And it was just me and my partner doing it, just us two. And we got everybody in except for one calf, which was pretty impressive. I was really excited about excited about that. And only one calf got loose, so he ended up running back out into the pasture and into the hills. And my boyfriend said, "Hey, you got to go get this calf." So I took out the ATV and tried to chase him down for 45 minutes. And a calf is when something's coming at you, just like I would, they tend to run, and they're like, something's chasing me, I need to run. And he was by himself. He didn't have his mom around. So it took me about 45 minutes to kind of chase him down with the ATV. we tried to do it with the horses and before that, and it just kind of wasn't happening. So, he got away from me twice. I face planted at one point. I had his tail in between my hands, and he had manure all over it, so it slipped out of my hands. I got manure all over me. Finally was able to get him into this other field where I kind of had him chased down with the ATV kind of side by side, and you really start to watch their movements and their body language, and he started kind of slowing down a little bit, so I started slowing down, and we were both pretty tired at this point. And before I even go on any further, and I just want to mention this too, that we try to have as low stress as possible at any point for these calves and the moms and any of the cows or the animals. Having that low stress environment is really, really important. So even though this might sound like, oh, I'm chasing him down, I'm ramming and jamming him, I wasn't. I was just really trying to get him because I needed to get him to bring him back to his mom. The cows were being re-ear tagged and all this kind of stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I got him, and sometimes you have to go a little fast in order to catch them. So anyway, I finally had him. There was a moment that I saw to jump off the ATV and kind of just jumped on him and wrestled him to the ground a little bit, caught my breath, tied him down, and just sat there with him for about 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes or so, and just kind of pet him on his neck, calming him down, calming me down, giving us both a rest. And then I'm like, yes, I did it. I did it all myself. I was so proud. And then I go to lift him onto the ATV to bring him back, and I was just shot. I could not lift. And he was probably about 130-pound calf. And at that point, I'm like, I really don't want to call my boyfriend to come and help me. I want to bring him back. I don't want to ask him for help. I just really want to do it. But I really had to put my ego and pride aside at that moment because I just couldn't lift him. And I didn't want to waste any more time. I wanted to get the calf back with his mom, and it was really hot out, and he was tired. I was tired. I just didn't want to put the calf through anything else. So I had to call him, and he did come out, and he even had a hard time lifting him, I do have to say, because he was pretty heavy. But anyway, that was a little bit of an interesting day, and felt a very big sense of accomplishment afterwards, because those guys, those little calves are really quick and really fast, and although super cute, they are really hard to catch, especially out in the big pasture where they can just run all over the place. So anyway, back to castrating. So when you are banding, you want to make sure that you get both testicles. Once you have the calf tied down, you really have to kind of feel for both. And kind of how the banding method works is once you kind of put the elastic around, it stops the blood flow. And eventually what will happen is within 2 to 4 weeks, the testes will dry up and they fall off. So I had castrated a few, and then there was one day when I went out there by myself to ear tag and saw that the calf had probably been born, I don't know, maybe a few hours before that. But the mom was quite ornery that day. And with the mama cows, you really have to be careful and aware of your surroundings and really try to keep them calm and yourself calm during this whole process. So I'll kind of paint you a little picture. When you come up on that ATV, and we use the ATV for all of the castrating, vaccinating, and ear tagging process. But the mom just went through a birth. The calf's on the ground. He's taking his first breaths of life. He's, within a few hours of being born. And the mamas instincts are really, really high and their hormones are really, really high, having gone through this whole process. So you really want to make sure that you stay really calm and keep everybody calm. Those moms look at you as a predator and they just went through this whole process, and then here you come up on this big loud vehicle. You come up to them and you're getting out, you're walking over to the calf and you're tying them down, and you want to try to make that a smooth, really calm process, but they look at you as, oh my gosh, this thing's going to eat my baby. So many cows, or every cow, responds to it differently. There's some that are a lot more calm than others, but in this case, this mom was pretty excited and she was just getting really, really upset as I was going over there. And there were a few times that I saw where my boyfriend, almost got charged by a couple of cows, and you want to be real careful because they can really hurt you. If they charge you and they get you down to the ground, and I haven't seen this, but what I've been told is, and from other people that I've spoken to, once they get you on the ground, they can just keep bucking you into the ground and you can get seriously injured. So you want to make sure that you are very aware of your surroundings. You're very aware of the mom. And if the mom does try to come at you, which they have a couple of times, you make yourself really big and you just try to get in there, do things quickly, smoothly, make it a super quick, easy process, and then get out of there so that the mom can get back to the baby and do her thing. And that's even going back to how we really try to make this whole process as smooth and natural as possible. Obviously, we have to get in there to take care of the calf and do what we need to do, but we really try to provide a low stress environment. So when we're seeing a calf being born, we don't want to get up really close to them. We want to give them their time and try to make it as a natural process as possible to not cause any undue stress for the cow. So anyway, back to the castrating part. I was banding and I kind of felt around, but I was a little nervous. This mom, was kind of bellowing and she was circling me and just really, really ornery. So I kind of tried to do it real quick, and I'm feeling around for both testes because you want to make sure you get both. If you don't get both, what can happen is it's known as a crypt orchid, and that's when you only get one testicle and then the other one is still there and alive and well, and you don't know that you have a crypt orchid. You put your bull in with cows that you don't want to be bred, and then all of a sudden 9 months later you have a calf. So you want to make sure that it's really important to get both of those testes into that band. So I was just really trying to feel around quickly. I banded, vaccinated, ear tag, got out of there. And then a couple hours later, I'm kind of thinking over my head, going through the process and thinking about what happened out there. And I'm like, oh no, I think I might have only gotten one. Like, I felt around, I thought I felt two, but I was really questioning myself. So then I went home that night and started reading some articles, and I'm like, oh shoot, I don't think I got both. So called up my boyfriend. We went out there the next morning, and sure enough, he checked and I had only gotten one. So again, you really want to make sure that you get both. And it also can be kind of an issue if you don't get both of them. And they can sometimes have infections develop, or if you do leave that and if you do leave them banded like that, and then you go back and try to band them, months later, 6, 7, 8 months later, that can actually cause them a lot of issues, and they're way higher risk for infection and things like that. So it's really important to feel for both, and you want to make sure that you can kind of get it, because sometimes both of them won't drop, and you really have to feel up in that kind of scrotal sac and almost pull it down in a way. So it's a really interesting process. And for those of you who are like, Oh my gosh, you're talking about testes and scrotal sacs and feeling around and all that stuff. Might sound really strange, but it's important and you got to make sure that you do it right. So, again, and I think I mentioned this before, I'm not sure, but of course you just want to make sure that your equipment is really, really clean. So we try to make everything as clean and sanitary as possible, again, to prevent any risks of infection. So again, another part that I wanted to note is what was really interesting to see again is, and I wanted to mention this before too. So I mentioned ear tagging, vaccinating. So when we have vaccinated, they're just vitamins that help. It's not any antibiotics or things like that. They're just vitamins that help with help the calf in the first few hours and few weeks of being born. So they're strictly vitamins, all natural stuff that we use at that time. So another cool thing that I saw was, after it was really interesting, one day I saw that calf die, or I think it was a different day than the twins, but there was a day where we had a calf that passed away in the morning, and then later on that day, we kind of sat there and watched a calf being born. And again, we don't try to get too close to the mom to witness a birth. We try to stay as far away as possible and let nature do its thing. Let the cow's natural instincts take over, give the cow, their time, and not provide any more stress with people just sitting there and staring at them, and she's getting stressed out because there are predators watching her having a baby. So we really try to make sure that we stay far enough away when they're having a baby. But it was a really cool moment for me because I felt like, wow, I just saw this whole circle of life happen within a span of 6 hours. And you go through these emotions when you see this calf die, and then you watch this mama cow have a baby and seeing the whole process, and you see the hooves start coming out of her, and then you watch her go through this birthing process, and then she pops the cow on the ground, and the moms immediately go to licking the calf. They clean them right away. And it's an incredible thing to watch. But what also happens is the placenta, which is called the afterbirth, that is also expelled from the mom too after the baby's born. And it's just this large sack of tissue. But what the moms will do is they'll actually, after they've cleaned the calf and hopefully the calf has latched on and started nursing, but the mom will eat the afterbirth, and there's a lot of nutrients in it. But out of their natural instinct, they don't want to attract any predators. So they'll sit there and make sure that they eat it. And some cows ate half of it, some ate all of it. But it's just a really amazing thing to watch, and just seeing that their natural instincts take over. There was one cow who had trouble expelling the placenta, and eventually it did come out. But when that happens, it's called a retained placenta. And if it's not really taken care of, it can lead to infection, but it is pretty rare. So we only had one or two cows and they were a little bit older, that didn't expel the placenta right away, and eventually it did come out. But we were just really watching that to make sure that she did finally push all of that through, so that there weren't any other complicated issues. Ear tagging, it's got to be a really quick process, and I did mess up on a calf once, and I felt absolutely horrible because I had him tied down and I was just about to clip it in his ear, and he moved, and I caught him a little bit and punctured part of his ear. So basically the ear tagging is just think of, when you're piercing an ear. But I felt so awful because it started bleeding and I felt so terrible. So, we were able to fix it. And what happened was, the calf moved, and he just moved his head at the right time and got out of position. But you want to make sure that you do the ear tag low enough on the ear so that it doesn't fall out and that doesn't get caught on something. And you want to ear tag it kind of in when you look at their ear, they have 2 ribs in their ear, and you want to ear tag it right in the middle, in the center of those 2 ribs. So I also learned vaccinating. And again, we only vaccinate with vitamins that will help the calf in the first few weeks. But vaccinating properly was something I had to really make sure to learn correctly too, because you don't want to give the shots too low on their neck. You don't want to give it too high. You don't want to give it in the same spot. And you want to make sure that you don't put that shot into their muscle. So you got to take some time to really make sure that you're in a good spot to give that shot. Gosh, what else? It was like a crazy interesting. I learned so much throughout this calving season, and yes, there was like hardly any sleep, and I didn't do all 60 calves myself. My boyfriend did most of them, but I was able to help with quite a few of them. And it was just a really interesting process because every calf was so different. There were all different scenarios, and one calf may have been super lively and a little hard to catch, and then other calves were kind of just sitting there letting you do their thing, and their mom was calm. Or like in that one instance where I didn't fully band that bull calf correctly, the mom was super ornery, and you really have to make sure that you're careful in those scenarios. So, I started really learning about, the body language of cows, much like horses. And I just like to study their body language and how they operate and just learn more about them, because I think when we educate ourselves about the animals that we're taking care of, it only helps us to better take care of them. And so my partner, boyfriend, whatever. I don't know what some people, I feel like lately the partner thing is like more of a popular term to call your boyfriend, and like boyfriend seems like a thing of the past, but whatever, boyfriend, partner. But he would take me out and we would just go on the ATV and kind of look at the cows, and he would show me, the different body compositions and how to tell, a good looking body composition in one cow and compare it to another one. Really looking at the milk sac and seeing what their teats look like, and comparing all different kinds, and just being able to learn all that stuff. It helps you understand the cow. It helps you understand the calf. It helps you just understand how you can take care of them better and things to look out for. So yeah, I learned we tried to transplant an orphan twin, which is the calf that was mine that unfortunately passed away, and I'll kind of save that for the next episode. But what happens is when you have 2 twins and the mom is only milking or letting one twin nurse, you try to take that calf and put her on another cow, and that other cow may have had a calf pass away. So you want, and she's still producing milk, so you want to try to transplant the calf onto that mom and see if the mom will take her or him as her own. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. We just met a rancher here in Montana who said that he's had a lot of success with transplanting, but I will save that for the other episode because there's a lot that you can go into and things like that. So yeah, it was just a really cool and amazing season. Being able to see again, the whole circle of life happen, and you kind of go through all these different emotions. You see death, and then you see birth and everything in between, and seeing the moms recognize their babies, when we had to separate the moms and the calves for a time, you see them bellowing for their babies. And then when you let them back out together in the pasture, they immediately find each other and they know which calf is theirs. So it's just something really, really beautiful. And learning about, the cow's vision and their sense of smell or their sense of hearing and different things like that, again, just makes you better understand them and how you can care for them. So, yeah. And another cool part is seeing my horse get better and better every day with working cows. So we haven't had any formal training on cow work. I really hope to do a clinic this summer with a professional trainer and really just learn how to better set myself and my horse up for success when we're working cows. And my horse is 3 years old, so she's still pretty young. Again, she's been around cows a little bit here and there, but no professional training. So we're kind of just learning together. And I've been, reading some articles and watched some videos and things like that on how to better have her work cows, but she's getting pretty good. The only thing is she gets pretty nervous when a cow comes at her. There was one day when we were out checking pairs and mom and baby, and we had my dog with us, and there was one cow who we knew was pretty ornery, liked to charge and will charge if she feels threatened, if her calf's around. And my dog went over to the cow, and I tried calling her off, and my dog is not a cow dog. She does pretty well, I have to say, but there are certain moments where she's not so great, and I just have to train her a little bit more. But she kind of ran after the cow, and then the cow started running towards us to chase her off, and I'm trying to call Harley off, like, no, don't. And then the cow started charging us, and my horse saw the cow coming straight at her, and she just freaked. So she spun around so fast, which was awesome. She did really good with their turn spins, but she spun around so quick that I just I couldn't even catch myself. So I kind of flew off to the side, and everybody was okay. But she still gets a little spooky around the ones that go a little quicker, especially the ones that come at her. But she's doing really good. She is a mare, so she has a bit of a bossy attitude sometimes, and which is great, because even when we ponied a couple of horses, if they get too close to her or they try to, get too close to the front, she kind of pins her ears and tells the horse, move back a little bit. So we got to do a little bit more work there, but she is doing really good. And, in a couple of years, if I really keep working with her, and I hope to, she'll be pretty good. So yeah, that's just been really fun to see her and help her gain her confidence as well as mine. In the beginning of the season, when a cow was coming at us like that, she, like I said, would kind of freak out, but she's starting to get a little bit better and a little more confidence. And even if she kind of does spin around a little bit, we go right back to the cow and try to push her off, and it's all about building her confidence at this point. So anyway, yeah, that was calving season. I'm sure there was a lot that I'm forgetting, but I just want to share that with you all, and just stuff that I learned, and what an amazing process it was, and all that happened. And again, it's just making sure that we are providing this low stress environment as possible, because even when I was working and loading and using the head gate it can be a pretty stressful thing for the cows. And my thought is always just trying to go in there and keep the cow calm and have that low stress environment for them, because it's just it makes things go smoother, and we never want to cause any undue stress for them. So anyway, thanks for listening to me ramble. I hope that you at least learned something, or if you guys have any questions or anything, my Instagram is Lauren_Pidge. And I'm thinking of going back and forth with this, but thinking of changing the Instagram name to Sustain the Range, but I'm not sure yet. So anyway, at this point in time, my Instagram is Lauren_Pidge, which is Pidge. And there's a little story behind that I will share at a later time. But so thank you all for listening. And again, I hope you guys learned something, and we will talk next week. Have a great day.